Welcome to Building the Future. I'm your host, Kevin Horick. You can check out new episodes of the show every Tuesday and Thursday at 2 p.m. If you missed an episode or want to get more information about the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com. Welcome back to the show. Today we have Travis Dulaney. He's the CEO, co-founder at Push Payments. Travis, welcome to the show.
Hello, Kevin. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on the show. I think what you guys are doing at Push Payments is really quite interesting, and kind of some of the other stuff that I want to kind of talk to you about kind of later in the show. But maybe before we get started, let's kind of get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Good question. I grew up in a small town in Virginia,
Okay.
actually a southwestern area. So I actually grew up in, I would call it the country.
Okay, very cool. So then walk me through kind of a little bit of your decisions to go to kind of post-secondary, and what did you kind of take in university?
So, when I started out, I've always had this love for computers and love for technology. And,
was there like a defining moment in your childhood or something like you remember?
Yeah, I don't think so. I other than the fact that I've always been building things. As a small child, I took things apart, which drove my parents nuts. But as I got older, I wanted to know how it worked and how to put it together and build new things. So, I grew up spending half my time on the farm, really, with my grandparents and building barns and helping on the farm and, doing things with my hands. So, I was always building something from a small age. But as I grew up, I remember actually in high school, I'm going to date myself a little bit, but, they had the big TI-99 and that was the big deal. We had computer class, right? And so we learned DOS, and you type 10 and a line and 20 and a line, kind of, and everybody did your little loops on the screen, so it drives the teacher nuts, right? And so, that's the kind of it was just always curiosity to me, and then ultimately. I don't know if it's like any engineer or not, but the curiosity of hacking kind of got into my head a little bit because I could.
Sure.
The fact that I could break into the university computer or I could get into an area I'm kind of not supposed to be, the fact that I could do it was intriguing.
And it's kind of like a rush, right?
Yeah, kind of. So after that, it kind of wore off a little bit, and I wanted to build things. So I started out. And actually a little community river or a little community college called New River up in Virginia, and later took classes at Virginia Tech, and really just fell in love with it. Really, I mean that was just There's two things that I found that I really enjoyed, and one was business, and the other one was engineering. But yeah, I think the computer engineering came because just the way I think. I believe that when you have a logical reasoning mindset and the way you think, everything seems to be logical and in an order and one after another. I think it just lends itself to being a coder or a developer or engineer or architect.
Sure. No, I think that makes a lot of sense. So you've kind of had a diverse background and you've worked in kind of a bunch of different industries. Do you maybe want to walk me through kind of your kind of career before you kind of got into the payment space and co-founded a company in Push Payments?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess I was trying to find myself a lot. I went to school and I actually got into a little bit of photography work and a little creative side, if you will. And then as I worked that, it allowed me to travel around the East Coast of the United States. And yeah, I guess for the most part, I enjoy warm weather. And Virginia,
you and me both.
It was just a little too cold. So I think Florida was just closer than California. So that's where I ended up.
Gotcha.
And, and so I was a little bit of a wandering soul, a little bit. Looking to find myself and find what I wanted. Always driven, always opening up really companies. I probably had 25 different companies and small little things here and there. So I've always been the entrepreneur type. And every job I've ever had, people used to go, man, you need to start your own company. You're just too passionate. Because in the corporate world, a lot of people don't care. Yeah. And so they come do their job, they go home, and that's the end of it, right? So I'm a firm believer there's two kinds of people in this world, and there's people that care and don't care. And I don't mean that in a derogatory sense. I really mean it's almost like a left and right brain, right? I mean,
totally.
The people that are creatives tend to be, a little bit, la-da-da, take day by day. That's just not who I am. I'm a type A personality. I'm driven. That's just who I've been. I think that my early childhood environment created a situation that really created me a driving individual that I was out to prove what I can do. And that's just I've never left me. So I found my way to Florida, and I worked in odd jobs to make ends, and no matter where I was at, I seemed to climb the ladder. And I found this little startup, and this startup company was called Claim Card. And Claim Card was just changing its name to a company called Wildcard Systems.
Okay.
So Wildcard Systems, I'm like, okay, a tech company, cool, that's good. I just come out of an M&A organization rolling up dial-up ISPs, basically, back in the day.
Yep.
And I was R&D. I basically built I built a system that allows you to build a website and a number of clicks without uploading all the stuff. Nowadays you got Wix and GoDaddy and things. Well, this was a website in a box years ago, right? Actually, did one of my, it's just little simple things, in web hosting companies. And so then this opportunity came along with Claim Card, and I was like, that's interesting, that's different. And so I got involved, and really as a project manager, I started out. And from there, I was given a couple of responsibilities around a joint venture that the company had with Visa, and it was all about converting travelers' checks to a card, right? So this was Wildcard was really the inventor of the open loop prepaid card.
Gotcha.
So meaning today,
on.
this is early on, right? So this is back in 2000. So it came out of Y2K, picked up this job, and I was like, wow, this is kind of interesting. And next thing you know, I was building the very first international prepaid program that went cross-border. So we did things with Banco Patel and Bank Mercantil and the Dominican Republic, and we did the Benny card, which still exists today, which is an FSA card. We did a number of programs that I was either product or I drove the development or one thing or another. I worked just about everything was to work in this company, and we were all driving toward the end goal, and sure enough, we got bought. We got bought by a company called eFunds, which then turned around and got bought also by FIS, and that's kind of the beginning of the end. So I spent really a good part of 15 years doing that, and growing up in the payment industry and that side, and the issuer side and the acquiring side. Got a really good understanding of a lot of different sides of the financial services world. And towards the end of my prepaid stint, the FIS had just bought Metavante. And Metavante, I was part of the merger team, so I helped integrate the two companies. And we started a financial services department within FIS, and that was about the time the economic collapse happened a number of years ago, 5-6 years ago. And so I'd won a contract with the FDIC to basically help close banks that were going down, right? And so I spent a good part of 4 years flying in the air between Dallas and Chicago and D.C., literally putting 150,000 miles a year domestically in the air. But it gave me a unique opportunity to see inside the bank all the subsystems, all the core systems. We would take a core system and literally walk in the bank on Friday and open it up as a whole different bank on Monday morning, accounting for every single penny for everybody's money. Yeah, so we got some really good technical insight of what went on. And that's kind of where I finally took over the EBT, which is a welfare type of card that is offered in every state. Welfare now is paid on a prepaid card, basically.
Okay.
So
Interesting.
we ran those departments and stuff, and then it came about in about 2012. It was time for me to leave. And in concert, I had started a consulting company that I'd worked in Latin America for a long period of time and helping the automotive industry re-engineer their call centers and re-engineer their technologies. And it was time to leave the day job, as my attorney told me. And so it was at that time I left FIS. And I spent pretty much most of my career building platforms, whether it be for MasterCard, for FIS, or Bancomer in Mexico, or whoever. So, and my co-founder also, he kind of had the same type of track, just in different entities. So, we started seeing what was going on, and really nobody was building a better platform. Nobody was really building a platform that could live in today's world, right? Because today's world is instant. It's virtual. People expect and demand things now. It's the instant gratification world. The millennials don't have patience for any of the understandings of the details, so they just want, give me what I need so I can go on. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. But what was happening is there was no real platforms. The FISs of the world, the Fiservs, these big guys, they're still on AS400s. And
wow, hey, that's crazy.
Right. Well, there's banks still on mainframes, right? So,
sure.
So they can't behave in the way that they need to. So, I guess what we saw was that here we are in a world, and we've been selling this user experience to everyone, and everybody's bought it. You, me, we all have. We all have cell phones. Yep. We all have. That's nothing more than an extension of us. And what happens when something takes too long to happen? You're getting annoyed. Why in this? What's happening? What's wrong? Right?
Yep. Totally.
Well, the real problem is the infrastructure isn't there to support it. It's been wired together with duct tape and Band-Aids to make it feel that way. But in the reality is, when you see these commercials of people standing up at a table going, "I'll get the check," and everybody goes, "I'll send you $10. I'll send you $. It doesn't really work that way. Behind the scene, there's a bunch of mice running ACH batch transactions and files, and it's really not all in line.
Sure.
So we said that we're going to build a better platform, and so that's really what we set out to do, to be honest with you. And during that time frame, we always were expecting to make it instant and real time, because single message settlement SMS is a lot more efficient than what goes on today. So we went down that road right off the bat. And so we really built a new platform that is truly scalable, using the latest technology and obviously in the cloud, so that it can scale not only globally, but also all the way down to the memory sticks, right? So it can all regenerate itself. I mean, there's AI built in. There's all these other things, really for the purposes of helping our industry really get up to date, because everybody is expecting something that can't be delivered. So when you're in a system design, how do you fix that? You're going to build something new on top of the old? You want to put another party dress on the same old pig? It's really about, the only way to do it is build brand new and then start to slowly migrate and build on the new over time.
Right.
So
that's an interesting point, actually.
Yeah, I mean, that's the only way you can get out from underneath it. Any good project manager knows there's either big bang or sunset. That's the only two ways to migrate.
I've never heard it like that, but that's actually brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, so that's kind of where we started and how we got there. And I don't know that it's an aha moment, other than a drive to do something better, to build a better platform. And we've been around long enough and have enough insights. We know how to do it.
Sure.
And so but we've got a lot of help. I'll do respect. There's a lot of people in the industry that has really reached out and helped us. I mean, we were, for the most part, nobody. I mean, people knew who we were, but we were still small, right? It's not like we're a multi-billion-dollar company, But we were dealing with multi-billion-dollar companies, right? We're dealing with these major processors. We're dealing with these major networks, the Visas, the MasterCards, the Amexes, all the PIN debit networks, these large processors, large banks. And
Sure.
so I have to say that I'm blessed that they gave us a chance and they gave us an opportunity to prove what we could do. And I guess hopefully it's karma for us because we always did the right thing all of our career, and we always really kind of always did what we said we'd do, right? If we couldn't, we'd say we couldn't, and if we said we'd do it, we did it, no matter what it took. And that's been our mantra. We today that we still work that way. We still push the envelope. We still push it beyond what most people think it can be done.
No, that's great, man. I love that. And I think the thing that I find interesting about kind of the whole banking industry compared to the Canadian banking industry, because I'm Canadian, but is there's like 5 or 6 kind of big Canadian banks, and like if you're not with one of those, you're not using a bank. But in like America, there's like hundreds of them, and like I watch the like Android Pay or like Apple Pay or whatever it's called. Payment thing, it's like we added 60 new banks today, and I'm like, what do you mean 60 new banks? So I think like people maybe don't realize how complicated the banking industry is in kind of obviously the States and even other parts of the world, right? Where when you guys are kind of solving this issue that almost, like to your point, kind of sounds simple, but it's like very complicated from kind of a technology kind of just, connecting to these systems that were never meant to be connected to, right?
Yeah, and you're right, and I would only correct one comment related to that. The technology is probably the easiest part. All due respect. I mean, anybody.
Okay.
I would say that I'm not special in the line of technology. I'm probably a little forward thinking, and I do think ahead. To support and consider scalability and all those factors. So I do think we're different than anybody's got out there. But with that said, I just go back and use an example like all the guys that talk about blockchain and things of that nature. That's a good technology. Sure. Now, whether it's a good fit for everything, maybe not. But they're just trying to find the use case. That's it's kind of like. Trying to find that water is looking for that one avenue it can get through, So sure. I don't blame them at all, but it's got a uniqueness to it that workflows and supply chains I think will completely be blockchain centric, years down the road. But it does take, again, that's a new approach because you got to build new. So I only say that because. Again, it's not about technology. There's a lot of technology, and there's always new technology.
Sure.
The bigger challenge is really getting people to agree.
Yeah, that's
so
fair.
One of the biggest problems you've got in any business is politics and competition. So when we look at those things, I think that it's very hard to make that happen. And in an area of the U.S. when you're the most highly competitive area, it is extremely complex, though. I don't want to negate what you said because that is absolutely true. The Canadian environment is a little simpler because there's a number of banks. Australia is exactly like that, right? It's sure. Really is a number of banks. In Latin America, the banks run the system, so it's a little easier. They dictate. Every country is a little different because there's regulatory confinements and things of that nature.
And population too, right?
Well, and need or just basically clear adoption, right? Yeah. So you have, things like a PSD2 in Europe that is driving. That's the regulatory framework that is driving change, right? So here in the U.S. is a little different because one is we don't really like regulatory, and we don't sure. support it. It's interesting. A gentleman shared an optic with me a couple weeks ago that was very unique, I'll have to say. I mean, I'm always looking at different viewpoints. To me, perspective is 90% of how you see things, and how you perceive it. So this gentleman was from Holland, And he goes, in the U.S. we come here, and the government isn't really seen as a positive thing; it's seen as a negative thing. For example, the only place that you can actually see your Bill of Rights is in a taxi cab in New York. Here's your rights. But anywhere else in the world, you got, there's certain people defending the individual's rights, right? And Europe is one of those, right? So it's very different, but I do think that will have a huge impact over here because the API economy is coming. And it's just a matter of time. And it's not so much APIs. Some of it is mindsets, and some of it is people don't want to change. And, people that are 5 years from retirement don't want to upset the boat, so they just kind of stay, same status quo until somebody else comes in. That's typical, right?
Yep.
So I think some of that is just time. Some of it is adoption. Some of it is regulatory framework to allow it. I was talking to a bank the other day, and they said, we can't do this because the regulatory environment would change the scope of what is viewed under this particular rule. And so as a result, some things in the cloud you can't do.
Interesting.
And so I thought that was interesting, right? And of course they were saying, "But you can do it. We can use it." But I thought that was an interesting way of looking at it, right?
Yeah, for sure.
But, so it is complex. It is hard, and that's really why we went after the hardest thing first, because everything else is downhill from there, really. And I do have to commend, though. I'm part of the Faster Payment Task Force, and that just wrapped up here recently. Still on the secure payments, but what the Federal Reserve did with that task force, I think, really solves the problem I talk about with competitive natures and the politics side. In short, they came and they put out the all come type of call, and everybody could join. Anybody could join, individuals, companies, advocates, processors, banks, whoever. And it was almost under the mantra that says, okay, guys, you need to come into this task force so we can figure out how's the best way forward for faster payments and digitalization. Because if you don't, we're going to do it, and you're going to swallow what we send you.
Sure.
So
yeah.
Interesting. That was an easy way of going, you need to get in here and do it, because if you don't, we will, right? And so I laughed about that even with the guys there, but it was a good message, because in the end, we built some good relationships during that 3 years, met some people we wouldn't have normally had a chance to. I used to joke with them and say, this is a Federal Reserve sponsored networking event. And but I think what it did is it took all the barriers down, and and I'm going to tell you, there were some drag out fights in those rooms. There was times that it got hot because it was competitive, and in some cases, some people were getting carved out, and they didn't like that. So while I know, like Karen from Payments had made a comment after the paper came out and said, Karen Weber, that is, she's the editor, and she had made a comment that said, well, how's this different than what we've got now? I think she's got more insight since then, but that's a fair comment, actually, because that paper, when it came out, you could read it. It had to be so high level and kind of directional that it couldn't be prescriptive, right? Sure. And that was part of it. We actually didn't want to say that we were deciding for everybody, but what it did do is it allowed us to take all the barriers down, and we allowed us to truly understand everybody's viewpoint. I remember making a comment, going, "Why do we do this, and why not? Why wouldn't we do this?" And somebody turned around to me, and I just won't name names, but they were a core processor, and they were like, well, you telling me that you're forcing me to do business with somebody else? And then I sat there and thought about it. I'm like, that's a very good viewpoint. I never thought of it kind of that view. It makes sense that we should share information and share things, right? And this was all under the idea of interoperability, right? So we should be able to interconnect with each other to make all the little networks one big network, right? Sure. And so that we all have access to send things to each other. But that made a lot of sense, because in some cases there are people that you might elect that you don't want to do business with for one reason or another. Sure. And you shouldn't be forced to do that, right? So you think about that there's that goes into the fabric of being a business owner, the U.S. and being a free economy, not government driven necessarily, and there's just a lot goes into that, right? So I only go through all that to say that we started this conversation about complexity in the U.S. and so forth. It is complex, it is challenging, and what we've done is very interesting with a different approach. And we're first to market with that type of thing. There are, again, like I said, a lot of partners here because we work with Visa and we work with MasterCard
Sure.
and so forth. And they have offerings of their own. Just we're positioned a little differently, right? And so everybody has their customers, and we see everybody as our customer. We want to really materialize this digitized economy where we can all interconnect. The way I see it is not to be futuristic or anything, but the world, we're all becoming digitized. We kind of don't think about it, but if we lost electric today, I know a lot of people would have a fit after about 5 minutes.
Totally.
Because you can't do things, right? Everything's on the internet. You can't get to things. You can't do things. And we are slowly becoming hugely dependent, which has its own fears, and issues. But at the same time, everything is online. Everything is out there. We don't like this show. We're not taping something on a 8-track or a cassette, right? And so everything is virtual nowadays. And so I think the only thing is not virtual is financial services, and it's starting there. But there's a heavy latency item that's stuck in the past, largely due to regulatory. But we're also a mature economy in the U.S., and so, and I've said this before, and really I think our own maturity as an economy is our biggest Achilles heel right now.
Interesting.
And so what we look to do is there's this virtual world of neobanks, challenger banks, there's the PayPals of the world, there's the lending companies. All these companies are totally virtual and out there. And people go, what's real-time payments? That's not a big deal. You can do this today. I had a veteran in payments say this to me on LinkedIn the other day. And it's just, people forget that behind the scenes, it really doesn't work that way. Affecting an open to buy or a balance on a card in a system you can control is one thing. Try to do it across 8,000 banks you have no connection to.
Yeah.
That's a different game.
Totally.
Right?
Yep.
So, what we see is that, in the near future, there will be this digitized world. Everybody will live in some form of cloud and online environment. And I'll say live, meaning everything, and it's not much farther than what we're doing now, is online. Yeah. So, cities, businesses are solely online.
Yeah.
So, really, we're building that digitized city. So the only thing that's not there today is the banking world. So we're that on-ramp and exit ramp to the virtual world, to the legacy world. And we're helping everybody get to that point.
So kind of, that's like, so how exactly are you guys kind of solving that problem? Because at some sort of level, I think, and tell me if this is a good example, like people nowadays, and I would put myself in this boat very much so, is like, I don't really necessarily care. Say, I want to maybe send you a message, or I want to call you, maybe audio, maybe video. I just want to search your name in my phone, and I want to say I want to message you, phone you, or video chat you. And I just want to push that button, and basically, however my phone or the device I'm using at the time connects with you, whether it's through email, a phone number, some sort of third-party ID, or proprietary app, it doesn't really matter, right? I just want almost the device or the platform to sort it out, right? So is that kind of how you guys are looking at this whole space, where you're kind of sitting in the middle just saying we'll just sort it out for you guys?
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'll pay you after the show. I couldn't have asked you to ask a better question, actually. And because really the truth of the matter is, you're like everybody else out there. As consumers, as individuals, sure. When we leave work or even at work, we don't care about that. I mentioned the millennials earlier. They're already there.
I'm a millennial, so I can bash them.
Okay, well, that's my point. I have kids that are definitely within that category, and they don't have the patience for it.
Yeah.
But that's also because they've been working and playing with computers since they were able to push a button.
Yeah.
I actually had them reformatting computers at 5.
That's awesome.
But so if you think about it, it's about the usage. We don't need. We just want what we want.
Yeah.
So that right there is the driving force, because the infrastructure that supports there doesn't allow you to do that. So if you were getting in the car and go, I just want to go to Chicago, and there was no roads to get there, what are you going to do? You have to fly to get there.
Yeah.
But what we're doing is building the roads that allow not only monetary payments, but data to flow with those items. So we are building basically a real-time data monetary rail that moves money.
Interesting.
Right now, anywhere in the U.S. and in India, and eventually over the next 12 to 18 months, everywhere in the globe. So the idea here is, what is an account, right? It's right now, it's not just a bank account. If I would argue, you go to Comcast or you go to your cable company or AT&T company or anything, you have an account. That has a monetary value. It's just in the negative that you're topping up every month to pay it back. So
interesting.
Right? So if you think about that, all your accounts, you have multiple accounts. Everything down to your browser login is an account. It's just a profile. So So all these things have accounts, and I've always argued that digital wallets aren't a product, because they were trying to sell them as a product. If you go back in time and you look at like the soft card, right? They're not a wallet. They're not a product. They're a feature. Yep. So if you look at Uber, that is a digital wallet that has taxi catching features around it.
Yeah, totally.
Nobody will ever call it that, because that's not what it is to you as a consumer.
Sure.
You're sold on the features. The capabilities is what makes it easy. So what we've done is we've built, I call it the electricity. We've made it this complex pain in the world that is confusing, doesn't make sense all the time. Half the time only open during banking hours, and it is really not built for today's society. We've changed that. We take all that pain and we stomach that for everybody else, that they can come in very simply and turn on and basically send data and send funds where they need to go and operate new business models or improve the current ones. A good example today is restaurants. Today, restaurants, when they close up, if let's say it's a long weekend on the holiday on a Monday, right? And it's Thursday night or even Friday, and they have a big dinner, right? A lot of people show up, and they've got, probably $5,000-$10,000 in food out. And they probably have $50,000 at least of receipts for credit cards for people paying for their dinner, right?
Sure.
Do you know when they're going to get that money? Maybe Tuesday or Wednesday.
Really?
And they still have Saturday, Sunday, and Monday to do dinners, lunches, and breakfasts or whatever they're doing, and still have to pay for all that food. That is a liquidity problem. That is a float that they have to deal with, right? So we've actually solving some of those problems, and we're working with processors today that allow those merchants to get paid immediately. They batch out at the end of the night, and a second later they get their funds.
Interesting.
So they increase liquidity, and they can do more, do better, right? And that's what this world should be about, right? We shouldn't. What we have really done is flip the model. Today, the model is built, and you pay interchange, and you pay all these things based on risk and based on time, because it's really about chargebacks. It's about brand risk and monetary risk. And our models, we eliminate that. So there is I shouldn't say there's no risk, because there's no such thing, but we have negated all the normalized risk. There's no chargebacks. There's none of that. When you pay for something, you pay for something. And so it's all goods funds model is what it's called. So it's the same thing. If you're going to pay with your debit, why does it take 3 days for that money to get there? Well, how's that different than me handing you a $20 bill?
Yeah, fair.
Right?
Yeah, okay.
So now think about a model in the world in the future that has a negative credit line underneath that, so that you can pull from a credit or a debit if you don't want to use your own cash.
Sure.
Right. So there's a lot to be said about, as we move to mobile, even if something simple is human factors. If I was to reach out and hand you a $20 bill, that's the same action if I was reaching out with my phone and tapping.
Yeah, totally.
So why does it have to go through all this risk model that's been built there for years? Now, there's a lot of people making a lot of money there. That's one reason. So it won't change overnight. But, we can at least help negate some of the challenges in that model today. But, at its simplest form, instant changes the game a lot for people in many cases. Aside from the typical emergencies and things like that, it really is a digitized ACH, and that's what the Fed is looking to do. We're digitizing ACH.
Interesting. So then, how do you guys monetize the platform? Do you take a cut somewhere along the line, or do you charge? Like, how does that work?
So right now, we obviously have cost to send our transactions, right? So we have we basically rent or lease rails and networks to ride those rails, and there's a toll, just like anything else.
Sure.
So today, we actually stomach a lot of that interchange ourselves. We do offer a pass-through model because people seem to have the hard time understanding it. But we flat rate the model, so it's just a transactional fee to move the funds. Now we also build like closed loop networks. So let's say you're a processor that has 1,000 customers, and those 1,000 customers do business with each other at times, right? So now it never goes out to a network. Now we really have built a closed loop network for you, and so then the pricing is different, right? So the bottom line is we think of ourselves as a utility. We do charge a transaction fee to facilitate that movement, and that's how we monetize it. We don't charge all these other fees, and we don't charge a percentage. It's just a flat rate. And then we hope at one time here in the near future, we hope to do, I would say, the right thing for certain entities. One of the things that has bugged me since the day it happened, you remember the ice bucket challenge last year?
Yep.
Everybody got in on that. Everybody dumped ice on their head, and really that charity raised more money in 45 days than any other charity in history.
Sure. Yep.
Do you have any idea how much they paid in credit card fees?
No idea. Not a clue. To be honest.
$8 million.
Wow.
In 45 days. That's
crazy.
Charity. That's people giving their money for helping others. Why are we charging people for stuff like that? Right? Sure. And so I have a bleeding heart for stuff like that. And, and this is, the U.S. is one place, but, and then there are other parts of the world, in India, if you don't pay, you don't get surgeries. So, some people get kicked out of hospitals and die on the streets. And people, simply because people can't get there to give them the money because they live in another town, and it's just not ways to doing that a lot. So these are issues that, I guess part of the part that bothers me that is one of the byproducts of what we're hoping to build globally is that we can truly have a no fee charity process that basically hospitals and charities all get funds that can be sent to them, without any fees. To me, that just doesn't make sense.
Well, sure. And I think too, like it kind of, the big thing that I think that is fascinating to me is how the internet basically makes everybody on the planet like a global citizen, but so many people don't think like that, right? And we've made these like weird borders around the globe, right? And for better or worse, and I don't really want to go on the political side of it, I think what the point I'm trying to get across is, like, to your point, it's like if you people have family all over the globe at this point, and they kind of always have, but I think nowadays, like, you can literally, like, we're in two different countries right now obviously we're on the same continent, but I've had people on the show where they're on the other side of the world, and it just doesn't matter whether you're next door or across the globe, and you guys solving a problem where you could send money to, a family member in need or for their birthday or whatever, almost basically instantly. It is just like, it just makes so much sense, right? And I love the idea of being able to do that. And like, it, until like not that long ago, you really couldn't do that without potentially days or at least hours to do this stuff, right? And now being able to instantly do stuff like that is just kind of very cool and fascinating to me.
Yeah, and that's, aside from the novelty of it, it really just it changes the paradigm so much.
Totally.
We kind of
and life-changing,
even from a
right,
business perspective. You're right. Yeah, exactly. It can really improve somebody's life. I used to look at it as we're allowing businesses even to buy time, right?
Yeah,
so in today's world, the biggest thing that we don't have much of is time. We're always working. We're always doing this. And if you could save 30 minutes to an hour every day just because you're dealing with a delay in a payment or something, or you're waiting from a control aspect and you need to control your cash flow better, and you could set that up on an automatic at the last minute when your paycheck hit, instead of having to guess whether or not it was going to hit the day before and make the payment, and all these different factors, right? I mean, we can go through literally tens and twenties, hundreds of use cases and examples, but if we are allowed to give people a little bit of time back, a little bit more time that we could spend with loved ones or get more done or whatever's your priority, then we should do it, right? And so, there is a fundamental aspect of that that's really about what we do, and some of that just comes from because I'm an efficiency guy. I'm Six Sigma, but I've always been that guy that just inefficient operations drive me nuts. And so why not just build one that it takes all that out? And that's what we're hoping to help people do, right? And improve their life, improve their business, improve their cash flow, all the way around.
No, I think that's great. And I think as more and more stuff kind of goes online, more and more of these services are going to be needed, right? And like, if I pay for something, I don't know, this is probably a bad example, but like, if I pay for some sort of piece of content, I don't want to wait 24 or 48 hours to access it. I want it on demand, right? And obviously, Google and Apple and other companies are, the second you pay for something, you could download your app or watch the video or whatever. But I think more and more content that will be kind of digitized and brought online, will need kind of these payment gateways to actually be instant, right? Or I want content from another part of the world or whatnot. So I think what you guys are doing is really cool and really needed. But we're coming to the end of the show. So let's maybe close with mentioning where people can get more information about you guys online and any other kind of social media you want to mention.
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously you can reach us at pushpayments.com online, and there's plenty of ways of reaching out online, to whether it be just adding to the newsletter or reaching out to get a demo. We do demos live so that you can see it real time yourself. Once you see it, it changes the game. It's funny how we talk about it a lot, but when people see it, I've had 30-year veterans in the industry with their mouth open. I have to kind of lift their jaw up.
That's awesome.
Because it's just, it's impactful when you see it. It is. And we're on Twitter. It's push. I can't even remember my Twitter one. That's sad. But we're on Twitter and LinkedIn. Basically, all you got to do really is Google us.
Yeah, you guys are just push payments at Twitter.
Exactly.
Perfect, Travis. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day.
Well, thank you so much, Kevin. Appreciate you having us again, and have a wonderful day.
You too. Thanks. Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening. The music for the show was done by Electric Mantra. You can check them out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.